Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Zenande and this is part 2 of me talking about the reason why I am always playing open cards whenever it's time for me to leave a job. Okay, now before we get into today's video, I'd just like to thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who has engaged and watched the first part of this video. Thank you so much. Whenever I read the comments, I'm reminded that my voice matters, and that's really because you guys just encourage me to continue posting, so I really appreciate that. Thank you. Now let's get into today's video. As I was drafting this video, I was reminded of the importance of learning to hold yourself accountable. So I thought it's important that I just stress to you guys that life is difficult and it is going to be difficult. It's going to continue being difficult. You just get tough as a person. We can't be 25, 30 and still be blaming our parents, our environments for our actions. Okay, now there are so many spaces where you can complain all you want, but I really appreciate that in this environment that I've created here, that our focus is on forging a way forward instead of complaining, because you can't move forward if you're spending so much of your energy and time feeling sorry for yourself. Yes, life is difficult and it's going to continue being difficult, but understand that you have the power to change your life based on the decisions that you make as you move forward. Okay, at least attempt to do so, and don't invest so much of your time feeling sorry for yourself. Otherwise, nothing will change in your life. And I want you guys to progress in life. Okay, now let's get into today's video. In part 1 of this video, we covered the reason why I always play open cards when it's time for me to leave a job. And we also covered the upbringing of my parents and the impact of their upbringing into the person that I am today. And lastly, we covered the fact that I grew up in a home, an environment where most problems were solved by simply fighting. And just on that, because a lot of people, I saw like some comments that are interested in this part of my life, I just want to say that this is not a story that's unique to me. And one of the things I think I've observed is that when you are sure about your ability to fight, and like you know that you always win, and you don't invest enough time practicing how to win arguments verbally, you risk ending up in jail, because you need to understand that the older we become, the more costly our mistakes are. So yes, it's interesting that we grew up in that environment, and I learned a lot of lessons from that, but I would never encourage anyone to take that or use that in raising kids. In today's video, we are talking about the events in my life that have shaped the person that I am today. And the first thing that I want to talk about is where or how I built resilience. Okay, now those who know me know that once I've put my mind on doing something, I'll do everything in my power to achieve it. And whenever I think about this, I'm always reminded of when I got my first job. Some of you guys will know that back in the day, when you didn't pay your school fees, you'd be sent home. And so this used to happen usually at the beginning of the year and mid-year, just before exams. And so there was this year, I didn't pay school fees, and some of my relatives or people I was living in the same house with, and school fees that year was 15 rands. Okay, during the first day of being sent home, it's usually half of the school that leaves. And then by the end of the week, you can kind of assess the people who are leaving. It's usually like 2 or 3 families. And so I got tired of being sent home during school. I decided to ask this other lady to give me a job. My first job was filling big, I don't know, I don't think buckets is the right word, but anyway, big buckets with water, because the lady that stays close to my house was building her home, you know. So she needed water in order to make bricks and for Inglebi to build the house. And I think I was in grade 5 or grade 6 when I got that job. Now, when I succeeded on that and I paid my school fees, I was like, you know what, I'm old, I can make my own money. I asked her to give me a job to make mud bricks. And so I had to make 100 mud bricks, and 1 brick was 1 rand. And she allowed me to do that. I worked, and for that specifically, I was working for my Christmas clothes. Anyways, I worked and I made 100 mud bricks. And when it was time for her to pay me, she tried to play me, but Zenande being Zenande, I woke up the following day, dressed up to go to town, and I passed by her house and I was like, and eventually she gave me money and said, listen here, you'll never get a job here again. At that time, I actually didn't care about her job because I felt like she was being unfair because she paid other people. But I think she looked at me and she was like, oh, you're a kid, I can play you. And I was like, there's absolutely no way. That's when I realized that you can't play me. Like, you can't. And if I put my mind onto something, I'll do anything in my power to make it work. Okay? So anyways, I worked and I paid for my school fees, which is something I probably shouldn't have went through, but I did and I succeeded. And that's probably because I always believe that I will amount to something. I always believe that school will be my way of getting out of poverty, and it has proven to be true. That covers when I learned to be resilient. Now let's talk about when I learned to never let myself be at the mercy of other people. Okay, now under this part I have 3 stories. The first one was when it was in 2002, I observed a woman being forced into marriage. You know, back in the day, a guy would come back from Joburg and be like, I want that girl. And then a few young men will go and basically kidnap her, and of course I'm being dramatic, but basically back in the day, women didn't have a choice in terms of who they should marry. They were basically sold by their families for cows. Anyway, I observed this lady, by, I think that lady was walking, I don't know exactly where she was going, and suddenly, and then they put her in a car, it was a van, those stallions, closed it, and in that car there happened to be a bottle of beer. She used that bottle to break the car windows, and apparently the owner of the car then started being serious, like, oh, and then they let her go, and she ran for her life, ran to the police station. And for me, it was the first time. It was, we grew up, at least I grew up I grew up around women who were forced into marriage, and they always told these stories about how they were crying, like, ee, ee. And the older women at the time, they were growing up, would be like, oh, which is crazy to me. But it's just how they were living back in the day. And so it was crazy to actually see it happen, because you think that something of that nature, at least at that time, I thought something of that nature would never happen to me. But I observed that lady, and she fought for her life. And I was like, there's absolutely no way this is going to happen to me. And this happened around the same time where the elders used to say, oh, I wonder who's going to marry you when you're lazy. And it was only then I was like, I actually don't want to get married to anyone. I actually don't need anybody to take care of me. I will make a way. I will go to school. I will graduate, and I will take care of myself. And that still plays a role in the person that I am right now, because I do not want to lose my autonomy. As soon as there's some sort of trigger of a person at least attempting to make me feel like I can't do anything without them, that's when I'm like, there's absolutely no way. But at least I understand that probably comes from trauma. But that was the first story. That woman, I still think about her today. I hope she's doing well wherever she is. Additional to this story, I observed in the villages that it was really quiet mid-January until November. And then suddenly, the man would come back from the city for December holidays, and we'd hear women crying and being physically abused by their husbands. And that's when I was like, there's absolutely no way I'm going to live like this. Like, I actually don't give a damn about getting married. And I think that's when I started seeing men differently, in the sense that, like, wherever you are, there's like fights. I just I was like, I don't want anything that has to do with marriage. And although I said that when I was a kid, that actually stayed with me for a long, 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 long time. I I always worry about people and how they express their anger, especially men. And so for me, as soon as you start acting strange, I'm like, peace. Guys, I think when you've been poor, you'll know that being poor is a humiliation ritual. Okay? So in the home that I grew up in, or at least spent most of my primary school years in, we're really poor, and so sometimes we'd be sent to a neighbor's house to ask for a bowl of mealie meal or a bowl of like some, I don't know, some food item for us to cook, especially closer to payday. And you'd get there, and although you'd get the mealie meal or whatever you're there to ask for, maybe it's sugar, they would say very mean things while they're giving you the food. And I used to hate it so much, but I was younger, and so I was the youngest in the home, and so I couldn't say, no, I'm not going, because I was also hungry as well. But that experience taught me that I will never be at the mercy of other people, and I will make sure that I can at least feed myself. In the villages, there were those houses that are considered rich, like they're just well-off people. They're not rich now that I'm older, but when I was growing up, I thought they were rich because they had maybe livestock, or they had beautiful houses, or they had a father that was working in the mines or something of that sort. You'd go there, in those houses, they would buy White Star mealie meal for human consumption, and they would buy Bluebird mealie meal. If you know Bluebird, they would buy Bluebird mealie meal for dogs, okay? And at my house, we used to buy 25 kg of Bluebird for human consumption. And so when you go there to ask for a bowl of mealie meal, they'd be like, hey, man, please, Amba, go get her mealie meal from the mealie meal of dogs. Like, it says, come get a zinja. Whole time you're listening, bruh, they are saying the child should get you mealie meal from the mealie meal that's bought for dogs. And you can't even be like, no, I'm not gonna take it. What about my pride? Because you're hungry. And bruh, I was like, I will eat this mealie meal. I will eat this mpokoko made by this mealie meal, but this can never be my future. The next thing I want to cover is my struggles with authority and apparently following rules, because a lot of people believe that I hate rules, which is not true. I just don't like rules that don't make sense. Like, for me, you need to explain the context, and then I will follow that rule in Latin Pambeni. But authority, okay. Now, I learned, guys, at a very young age to humanize people, okay, especially adults. Because I grew up in very conservative communities, I had that mentality of thinking that adults know all the answers. And then life showed me that you can't trust everyone. You can't trust people just because they are older or they've lived for longer. With this part of authority, I just want to tell one story, okay? So, there was this lady, okay? This lady was my mother's mother figure. My mother lost her mother at a very young age. And so she went through that period of looking for a mother in other people outside of her home. She then loved this woman like her mother. So this woman thought she had capacity to help me, okay? She then agreed with my mother that she'd take care of me. She'd take me through school. I'm going to start grade 3, right? My mother goes to where I was living, takes me to live with this woman. Yeah, man, I get into this house. Now, my mother has to leave for Port Elizabeth because she was working as a helper in the house of one of the teachers in the villages that I was living in, where she left me. Bruh, the first 5 days of school didn't end without that woman starting being weirdish. The first problem was when the kid I was living with, she lost a button in her shirt. And that woman said, I stole the button. Now, I'm wondering, what would I do with the button? Like, why would I steal a button? For what? But because I had learned that sometimes abantu abadala are going through their own things, so you don't have to care about everything. I kept quiet. From that button situation, things went downhill. She always reminded me that I didn't go to her house with a bag of maize meal. Now, I couldn't even be mad at this because she was telling the truth. I showed up at her house with absolutely nothing. Like, she would make me work and just just 30 minutes before my mother comes back. Now, I didn't have a phone. She had a phone, so she knew when my mother is coming back. 30 minutes, she'd be like, you didn't even want to work anyway, sit down. I would sit down and do my homework. 30 minutes after, my mother arrives. And she was like, what's wrong with Zenande? Why are other kids working and Zenande is not working? Whole time, as a nonsense is, we're not even working the whole year, 3 months. And I was the one working, but they just started working 30 minutes now because my mother's coming. And because my mother, I don't know if she was trying to get accepted or something, I don't know. But anyway, she would put me in between her legs. You used to be around dinner. And that lady would tell her, oh, she did this one time. And mother was like, bah! And oh, she said this the other time. Bah! And I think that's when my resentment started. And when I can't even call it vengefulness, because I was not one to be vengeful, but I think that's when I decided to just stop crying. You would beat me up and I would just not cry. It's not something that happened once. It used to happen every time my mother comes back. She would beat me because you don't listen. And what's worse is that I'm an only child. She'll always be like, oh, God, what have you done to me by giving me one child that doesn't listen? And eventually I was like, you don't have any other option. I'll tell you this, I came out of that house hating cooking oil. I still hate cooking oil, even to this day. I hate fish and chips because it reminds me of that smell of cooking oil. I hate cooking oil to this day. And the reason why I hate cooking oil is because I came back this one time from school, came back to a house that didn't have food. And that lady was out somewhere. She came back and she was like, who ate this? It was samp and beans. And I think the two people I was staying with, 2 kids I was staying with, ate the maize and samp and beans. And she was, who ate this? Both of them were like, no, not me, not me. Hot imbiza itwe iyashayina cooking oil. Firstly, I came back from school. I came back after them because they had this thing of running home after school. And for me, I didn't have any reason to run because I knew that I was going to get in trouble just by existing. So she was like, who ate this? And they said, not me, not me. And I was left as the last person to respond. And my response was like, I came here and there was no food. So it can't be me because when I got here, there was no food. I was the last one to arrive. And she was like, yo, when you don't listen, hey. And that day, she was a herbalist. Wayipheka imbiza yentelezi. Wayipheka imbiza yentelezi wayigalela kwibhekile. And then sahlala, because I thought she had forgotten about beating me. Because she said, "Zakubonisa wena." As we were about to sleep, she was like, oh, I haven't forgotten about you. Take off your clothes and go outside. I took off my clothes, went outside. I'm so sorry, guys, for those who don't understand Xhosa. I don't have the English for explaining this part. Bruh, that thing was so itchy. Yeah, bruh, I couldn't sleep. And sit. Yeah. It was so itchy. I don't even remember when I slept that night. From that experience, even as an adult now, this happened in grade 4, even as an adult, I hate the smell of cooking oil. That's one. And secondly, one of the things that I learned, or coping mechanisms I learned from that home, was to not show emotions. Because sometimes I felt like she was just trying to poke me and get a reaction. And so when she would beat me up, I wouldn't cry. When she'd say the most mean things to me, I'd just be in my own head and just choose to not hear her. And so right now as an adult, I sometimes get in too deep in my head, so much that I stop talking at all, which is not good for me. After leaving her house and going to my house to live with my parents, I said I will never ever live in other people's homes. From that experience, I learned that old people are not always good people, and some of them are just going through their own things. And sometimes a person really would like to help, but they don't have capacity to help. And I observe this a lot in people who are in the Eastern Cape. Those people take kids who are poor in the Eastern Cape, and they're like, oh, don't worry, I will take care of this child. And they only take them because maybe they have a young kid that needs to be taken to school or crèche in the morning, and when someone comes later, they need to be taken from crèche to home, and the parent probably works very long hours. Now the problem with that is that once the kid that you were taking the poor kid from the Eastern Cape for is able to speak and is able to take care of themselves, you suddenly feel like, oh my goodness, this child. And sometimes you forget that children are just children. They do the most dumbest of things, but you have to just understand that they're just being kids and they're trying to figure out their role into the world, and they just need guidance. And so, guys, if anything, I understand that you guys have good hearts. Just try to not take away poor kids from their families unless you have capacity to help them. If you can, maybe help them get scholarships and take them to boarding school. But if you don't have the patience of being a parent, please don't play with other kids, okay? With other people's kids. Now, the last part of this video, I just want to talk about the need to feel accepted. Because I've always been a weirdo. Of course, I've been in spaces where, like, sometimes I'll just be existing and people be like, oh, Zenande doesn't like me. The whole time I'm like, I don't even care about you. Why would I not like you? But I think I learned now as an adult that sometimes there are people that I just click with, and there are people that they're just not my people. And this usually happens when, you know, those people are always guilty about something. Even if they didn't do anything, as soon as you're quiet, they think that they did something to you. You can't live within my space or in an environment that I'm in if you have that mentality. As a way to conclude this video, I engage with a lot of young people, and a lot of them are frustrated about the need to always announce their actions in terms of where they are and why and all of that in corporate. And I understand that, guys, this is probably difficult, especially when you just join corporate. And I always encourage people, always at least try to explain that predictability in an environment that you're in is very important for the psychological safety of the people around you. Now imagine if you were to live, or if you were living at home with your parents and you came back from work and your mother was not there and there was no explanation, or your sister, your sibling was not there, or your cousin was not there and there was no explanation. As a junior, especially when you are being allocated work, it's important that people know where you are with the work that you do, that you have been allocated. And it's just important, that's just important for the predictability of the environment, to make sure that people kind of know what's happening around them. I understand that it's probably difficult for a lot of you guys, but I'd really appreciate if you could try and understand that it's just your contribution in making the environment that you're in predictable. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please share any tips, maybe the things that you've learned through your experience in corporate, and understand that this environment, I intend for this environment to be a safe space where people are here to grow, because I'd like to see you guys succeed in whatever that you guys do or choose to do with your time and your lives, and understand that life is difficult and it will continue to be difficult, and just do well. I wish you guys all the best. See you guys on the next video, which is coming next week, Sunday at 12. See you. Bye.